Today I want to share a material about defining and non-defining relative clauses. And then for our presentation today, there are some materials. For the first one is relative clauses, which consists of its definition and the examples. And then the types of relative clauses, which are defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause. And then the difference between them. And then the last one is the examples of it. And next we are moved to our first material today, which is about relative clause, which is a phrase that adds information to a sentence. So all relative clauses describe a noun and they begin with one of relative pronoun or relative adverb. Next we have a relative pronouns, which is used to introduce a relative clause. The most common relative pronouns that we know is who, whose, whom, which, and that. So the first one we have who, which is used to replace the subject pronoun I, she, he, we, and they. And the examples of the sentence is, this is the man who broke the window. And next we have whose, which is show the possession or relationship, and the examples is, she knew the family whose house we bought. And then there is whom, which is used to replace the object pronoun me, her, him, us, and them. And the example is, they have found the lady whom they want to interview. And then there is which. Clauses that begin with which are almost always non-restrictive. So the examples of the sentence is, my precious blue lamp, which was in the room, was broken. And then there is that, which is clauses that begin with that are almost always restrictive clauses. And then the examples of the sentence is, the lamp that was in the room was broken. And then we have relative adverbs, which is used instead of a relative pronoun plus preposition, and these often make the sentence easier to understand. So we have where, when, and why. So the first is where. It used to point a place. The examples is, this is the restaurant where we first met. And then there is when, which is used to point a time. And the examples of the sentence is, do you remember that winter when it snowed non-stop for weeks? And then the last one is why, and it's about the reason. And the examples is, I don't need to explain why you are all in trouble. And then how to use relative clause in a sentence. So here we have some examples of the sentence. So the first one is, yesterday I met a man. He works in the circus. To connect that two sentences into the one sentence, that we need to use relative clause, which is, we use relative pronoun who to connect the sentence, and it could be, yesterday I met a man who works in the circus. And then the example number 2, I bought a cell phone. It has internet access, and it could be, I bought a cell phone that has internet access. And then the last here we have, there's the restaurant. I ate at that restaurant last night. So it could be, there's the restaurant, where, which is a relative adverb to connect the two sentences, I ate last night. And we are moved to the types of relative clauses, which are consist of defining relative clause and non-defining relative clause. The defining relative clause give important information to identify the person or thing we are talking about. So in defining relative clause, we don't use a comma. And the examples of the sentence, we can use which or that in that sentence. And it is the first one. The office equipment which we bought was very expensive. And then the student that I saw yesterday is from Spain. And then number 2, we're moved to non-defining relative clause, is give additional information about the person or thing we are talking about. In here, we use a comma in the sentence. So we have some example here. The first one, Mr. Jens, comma, who is the CEO of the company, comma, will retire soon. And next, the Smiths, comma, who live next door, comma, have bought a new car. Next, here we have the difference between divining and non-divining. We can see if a relative clause is divining or non-divining by removing it from the sentence. If we remove a non-divining relative clause, the sentence still has the same meaning. And if we remove a divining relative clause, the sentence has a different meaning or it's incomplete. So we have the example here. My brother, comma, who lives in California, comma, is an engineer. If we remove who lives in California, the sentence still has the same meaning. It could be my brother is an engineer. The relative clause who lives in California is just an extra information. And then the other examples is that's the student who failed English class 3 times. If we remove who failed English class 3 times, the sentence is incomplete. So it could be that's the students. Therefore, the relative clause who failed English class 3 times is essential information because it defines which student specially we are talking about. So here is some examples of defining clause, which is I read all the books that I borrowed from the library. So without the clause I read all the books, this sentence is incomplete. So it could be what books. And then the next one, the new Stephen King book which I borrowed from the library is very good. Without clause, the new Stephen King book is very good. Sentence is incomplete because just the library part was only an extra detail. And the last part here in our presentation today is about the difference between the use of which and that for a relative clause. Which is the first one. We use which for non-divining relative clauses and use a comma before it. And then we use that for defining relative clauses and we don't use a comma before it. Alright, that's all for the presentation today. Thank you for your attention, and if you want to answer the quiz, please click the link below. And goodbye!